Welcome everyone. My name is Bapi Chakraborty. I'm a technical architect by profession, and I would love to welcome everyone to this day of Azure Conference. This year, Azure Community Conference is a 3-day multi-track virtual conference between 29th of October and 31st of October 2021. And this conference is aimed at cloud and web developers working with open source and cloud native technologies on Microsoft Stack. It hosts technology experts around the globe to educate, network, and share their expertise with global attendees. Before we get started, I would like to offer a vote of thanks to our sponsors and supporters. And with that, a round of introduction. So first of all, you heard from me. I work as a technical architect for cloud solutions. And for sure, I have Monojit with me, who's a cloud architect himself. So maybe Monojit, you want to just go ahead and introduce yourself quickly?
Hey, thanks, Papi. Thanks everyone for joining. I work as a cloud solution architect, as Papi mentioned. I work primarily with the partners in helping them to design architectures for their end customers, and primarily working in the area of cloud native technologies. Thank you so much, guys. Nice to get connected and work together.
Thank you so much, Monojit. Quick housekeeping items. So as we expect this particular session to be of 2 hours, so request to you all as you join the session and as we continue, make sure you are on mute if you are not having a question or you do not want to ask a question in that case, so that there is no disturbance or background noise, and we would like to minimize that. I understand that today is a Sunday for sure and everyone is joining from home, but appreciate if you can just take care of it to make sure that we have a good conference and conversation. Secondly, let us make it interactive, interesting, and informative. So there will be questions from our side. There will be questions from your side. Let us try to make it conversation and as well. Right? The third one. So we'll try to take some breaks in between, maybe 5 minutes break, because 2 hours is a long hours of conversation. So we'll try to make sure that we take small breaks in between if possible. If not required, we'll continue. Right? So we'll take a call as we move forward. With that, let us get started. Today's conversation is all about Kubernetes and service mesh. But before we go there, I just wanted to reflect on the current trend that we see in the industry. We had a long, several years or decades of applications which were developed in monolithic way. Even though they were independent services, they were tied together in a very tightly coupled manner. And then we know the perils of such applications in order to be able to modernize them, in order to be able to update them and then roll out in greater production in a global fashion. And hence, I think it is really unnecessary to bring to the perspective of the fact of microservices and the way these applications are being developed and deployed and managed today. They offer us not only autonomous systems, but also they are more modular, easy to manage, and also to deploy and then roll out newer capabilities in a faster fashion with an integration of DevOps and so other newer technologies that is there. But microservices, they have their own challenges as well in terms of how do we schedule such smaller modular application at scale? How do we make sure all these applications are able to talk to each other and then their state is always available? They are healthy. And is there a way to kind of move to another service which is running in case the primary service is not available? How do we take care of failover? How do we take care of scalability and then networking, to be more precise, because that's the underlying foundational part of it. How do we quickly discover these services and then make sure that any application upgrade that happens is always coordinated? So if you would have been already working on the microservices architectures and application development and deployment, you are well aware of it. So how do we solve this problem? So there came the world of Kubernetes. And Kubernetes for sure is one of the greatest innovation that we see in this particular part of the world to be able to orchestrate microservices, containerized application to a greater extent. So for those who are probably just getting into Kubernetes world, just wanted to spend a few minutes to understand this architecture, how it really works out. So Kubernetes has two primary components. If you look at, for sure, there are so many, but in from the perspective of how these various components are working together, there are two parts. One is the control plane, the other one is the worker nodes. The control plane basically hosts all the core services of the Kubernetes orchestrated platform itself, such as the API server, the controller manager, the scheduler, and of course the entire configuration database, which is in etcd. The Kubernetes users, they communicate with the API servers and apply the desired state. It means if you want to apply a specific configuration and the management part of the Kubernetes, you directly communicate with the API server only, and you do not configure or manage anything directly onto the worker nodes at all. So everything that goes, it goes to the API server in the control master plane. The master node actively it enforces all the desired state onto the worker nodes, which hosts the further services for the application and the pods, the way you call it, and each pod hosts various containers inside. The worker nodes, they support communication between the containers, of course. So there is a concept of kubelet. Those who are already working may be aware of it. So kubelets basically in turn orchestrate the various, the placement of the containers inside pods within that particular worker node as well. And the worker node, it also supports communication from the internet. So when you host your application inside a Kubernetes cluster, the applications are exposed. If it is exposed to the internet, then the worker node basically hosts that particular application. And then through various other components such as API gateways or ingress gateways, they are used to be able to provide access to your applications from the outside world. Now, given this particular paradigm in terms of how Kubernetes performs the various aspects of application management and rollout, and then making sure they are available, scalable, and ability to identify the failed application and then bring it up whenever there is a red alert. Making sure Kubernetes infrastructure is always updated, and making sure that Kubernetes entire set of applications are always available, and the manageability aspect is no small feat. And hence, there came the cloud to the rescue with deep integration of the various aspects, because Kubernetes on its own is not enough for your application infrastructure. So how does this application running in a Kubernetes cluster really work in a managed platform? So there came the Azure Kubernetes Service on Microsoft Azure platform. Microsoft Azure platform provides an automated upgrades and patch and everything that needs to be supported for your Kubernetes services. It is highly available and reliable. It's easy to secure and making sure that the cluster is scalable enough in terms of whenever there is a necessity to increase the number of pods or to increase the number of nodes. It makes sure that it is self-healed, and entire API server monitoring is also taken care. And most importantly, the entire the managed control plane is of no cost to you. Right? So that means the entire management control plane is managed by Microsoft for you, wherein you take care of the worker nodes and every other application that is running inside it. So that is how the overall the architecture of Azure Kubernetes Service works out. That's great. I think to some extent we addressed some challenges that microservices would face, and then how Kubernetes and managed services such as Azure Kubernetes Service will solve some of these problems with deep integration into the various cloud native services of management, monitoring, DevOps, and all other parts of it. So how do we look at this today? We look at it this on the overall deployment model, something like what you see on the screen right now. So you may have hosted various web and mobile application in the cloud, and then they are being accessed from outside the your corporate network or maybe over the internet, all through an ingress gateway. So you may have various services, service A, B, C, which basically represent a domain-driven design microservices architecture that follows polyglot mechanism to be able to host specific databases that is required for your kind of service. That's great. So the entire platform is being hosted with Kubernetes as an orchestrated platform, but there exists further challenges that kind of align with it. So that means you will have your databases and storage, you will have your Kubernetes infrastructure that could be managed or your own self-managed, but still there is a lot that is there in terms of security, in terms of communication, in terms of service to service communication, and in terms of the health monitoring, and then having a 360 view for the entire cluster. And that is where exactly service mesh really plays a role. So what really is service mesh here? I don't want to give a very textbook definition, but if you look at it, if I talk about east-west communication across various services, that is what is very important in terms of making sure they are always secured. Security, now that we have service mesh in place, can we secure the communication at any point of time between two different services when they pass on specific messages or events in order to process them further? At the same time, is there a way that I can always focus on my business logic instead of taking care of these plumbing activities? And that is where service mesh really plays a role. Then comes the health. Can we dynamically identify the failure of the service or a specific pod or a container and then move that particular traffic to somebody else who can host and perform the same service? Can I identify where the failure occurred? Can I correlate between different events and identify the source of the problem? And distributed tracing is a very well-known service that needs to be there for any kind of a microservices world application. Then for sure, some of the benefits such as blue-green deployment models and many more that is really required for service mesh that really helps service mesh to provide such services to the Kubernetes and microservices world. Now, how does it really look like? I just wanted to kind of reflect a few seconds here because we have a lot more happening right after this. So service mesh, as you know, there are different deployments and different solutions out there. To name a few, such as Istio and Linkerd. And for sure, there is an open service mesh out there that you want to probably play with. These service mesh solutions really offer and take away a lot of pain points that in this part of the microservices world, Kubernetes world may face in terms of distributed service management, secure health monitoring, and tracing. So without much ado on this particular conversation, let us get right into the live discussions wherein Monojit is going to take us on the further journey. Monojit, let's get started.
Bapi, thank you so much. Thank you so much for this nice introduction and, in fact, detailed view on what we are going to do. Team, like as we have discussed, and Bapi has, mentioned, like how we, move on this journey. Before I share my screen, let me give you some kind of a introduction, like the thing that we are going to do, and also the way we will run through this workshop. I already have a GitHub link which created for this. Let me share this in the chat window before I start sharing the screen, if I can do that. So this is a public repo. You can access it. The purpose of this this workshop primarily is that since it's a 2 hours workshop, right? Doing a completely hands-on with lot of tools and resources installed, all these things takes time. So that's the reason we have created this step-by-step flow in the GitHub, where you can go through it at your own time. I will run through some of the things today, what Bapi mentioned. We will discuss in depth on each of these points. And I will not expect you to do at the same time with me, but all the tools, resources, everything are provided there. You can try it out along with me or at your own leisure time, and always reach out to us in case of any kind of issues or anything that you encounter and how to move forward, right? So I will share my screen. I will quickly check my voice is clear, Bapi, and everyone. Scott, thank you. I will share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great, Bapi. So let me share my screen and then I check the screen sharing and other stuff just to check if the bandwidth is all good. I hope you guys can see my screen, my Visual Studio Code and switching screens. Is it fine for everyone? Great.
Yep.
Fantastic. So let me go back to the deck that Bapi was presenting. I will just and I don't want to spend too much time on that because there are a lot of things that needs to be discussed along with hands-on samples and all. But there are a few things where so I will take a cue from here where Bapi ended his discussion. So when we talk about a service mesh, basically it will be worked upon on a Kubernetes cluster. Any form of Kubernetes cluster, I will explain when I go through the GitHub repo. And the basic thing that it does, that it is working on top of the Kubernetes REST API and its components, right? It is using Kubernetes REST API and working on the components that Kubernetes has created. Along with that, it is also creating its own components. But I'm not going into the too much details right now, but only one important thing in this diagram that you probably need to look into is the proxy that you see on the diagram on the left-hand side. So this is one of the very standard diagram, although it is coming from Istio, it's an open source community, but it's a very standard diagram, what you see on the left-hand side. And it is being followed by every service mesh provider. On the right-hand side, you see a Linkerd diagram. They all are same. And by the way, we are using these two just for sake of communicating with you guys, because we need some tools and resources to do that. There are plenty of other service mesh tools available. We will talk about some of them, we'll mention them, right? Now, the important thing here is the proxy thing. So every service, so if you are familiar with Kubernetes service, and as we expect that you understand some bit of the Kubernetes components like pods and deployments and services, the service is the way to communicate with the outside world, right? That's how our applications talk to each other. And don't worry, I will show you diagram where even if you are not familiar, you can get a better view of this. But assume for now that there is an API, service as an API. What the service mesh provider will do, it will add a proxy. It's nothing but a container, another container in the same pod. We call them the sidecar container, right? So that sidecar container, it will automatically inject and then do its own stuff. What is that stuff that we will see? But that is the core of any service mesh. Even if you someday decide to write your own custom solution, you may be working on a product, or you really working in a community who wants to build their own service mesh, right? So this is the key, that you will explore Kubernetes REST API, their components, and then you need to inject your own container inside the existing container. And then that acts as a proxy, which will do the stuff that service mesh or your own custom component wants to do. The same goes with the Linkerd. So as I said, let's not mention that what Istio is doing or what Linkerd is doing. Basically, it's a service-based technology that is being implemented this way. And every service-based technology has two components, two planes basically. What you see on the left-hand side, the topmost part is called the data plane. So you can see from the diagram. Is the diagram visible to everyone, Bapi? Is it visible? Okay. So if it is coming from the ingress traffic is coming from left, right? And then during the east-west traffic, before that, the data plane components, they are the core. They are not the core. They are basically the first-hand gate that service mesh provides. All requests are trapped, right? Then the meshing and all these technologies happen. The features that service mesh provides, everything happens there. And on the bottom part of it, you see the control plane. That is the control plane of any service mesh technology where the core components are deployed. So these are something a black box for us. It should be. We should not touch that. Our work will be with the data plane components, right? And similar concept on the right-hand side diagram. The reason I wanted to put it side by side, pasted in one diagram, both are taken from their respective sites. So no rocket science here. The only reason for bringing this here on this is that to make sure that there is no complexity at all. It's a very simple architecture that they follow, but the features that they provide, which we will see now, those are very critical features, right? So if I move on to the next one, this is a very shortened view of how an Kubernetes cluster or AKS. We are using AKS for today's workshop for all the discussions and samples, right? But it can be any Kubernetes cluster, right? So it doesn't matter. So it's up to you because Service Mesh is very open in that term, so it works with all the clusters. Now, this is a very standard view where the ingress is coming. It's a north-south view. The moment it reaches the Kubernetes cluster, what is termed as 3C, that's where the ingress is there, right? So if you remember Bapi's previous slide where he was showing the ingress gateway and then the routing happens, a similar thing, right? It's just a drill down version. Now that ingress will route the traffic to different services, which is accordingly the Kubernetes architecture. That's how Kubernetes implementation always works. Why we have marked it with a red mark or ellipses here is that is the piece where Service Mesh will come into play. So Service Mesh now will try to either provide its own ingress or use your or our already existing ingress and try to use that. And before routing the service to service A, service B, service C, it will do its trick so that we get all the meshing features, right? What are the features? I haven't talked about it, but just to give you a high-level view that there is nothing, and where Service Mesh actually resides. It resides within the Kubernetes cluster and just before the ingress or at the level of ingress, I would say, right? Now, it can bring in its own ingress or it can use your own ingress, both the way it works. Okay, we will come to these things later. We will talk about the features that the Service Mesh provides, and then we will try to explore and implement those things in an AKS cluster. So this is what you see is the GitHub page only. It's a README file. I opened it with a separate tool, but you can actually follow along. Maybe if that helps, I can go through the GitHub page where we have talked about it. I will be, you can scroll through the GitHub page. If any one of you cannot access this ping, let us know. But I'm just, following this flow only, just in a different window. That's it.
Just to also add, just in case you have any specific questions, feel free to use the chat window and post it there. I'm looking at the chat window. I will pick it up in between our conversations or towards the end.
Right. So I forgot to tell that. So because it's a 2 hours thing, we will do a pause after 30-35 minutes, a quick pause, but don't wait for it. Please feel free to add your questions and we can, myself or Bapi, whoever is not talking at that point of time, we will take care of the questions, right? At this point of time, any questions before we move on? Just to check.
Nothing so far.
Great. So from the feature perspective, what it provides, basically. First important thing for which the probably the Service Mesh, when it was thought of and all these open source communities started contributing, is the observability. Looking at having a view of the services, how the services talk to each other. That is the first thing. So, for example, just to show you what that observability means, is basically, if I can quickly switch to the day, this is a view from Istio's plane of one of my applications that is deployed there. You can see very easily, you can have a look at how much volume of traffic is coming in, how much duration, and what is the throughput, the most important thing, whether the spike, at what point the spike has happened, when it is went down and all this stuff. It's a very clear, concise view that you see here. Some of the service-mesh technologies, and almost all of them actually, are all connected with Grafana. Some give a very customized Grafana view, which you saw in the previous screen. Here, like it is a screen from my Linkerd implementation. They directly integrate with Grafana. So what you see is a Grafana window where I was testing with a load, whatever is the you know the request per second, how the inbound and outbound has responded to the request, how the API is behaving. You get a complete one-shot view into in a single window. So this is what the first and primary thing that you see for every service mesh. Observability is the key, right? So what we mean by that? So let me take you to the Visual Studio Code here, where I have some predefined samples already running. So let me open the easiest one, basically, to set the context. So I'm just opening the dashboard of the Linkerd, which is already installed, right? And I will show how it got installed and everything. We will do that. But let me first run through this. So what it basically does, this command, it will in the background, it will open the dashboard for Linkerd, right? And it will try to capture whatever request is basically running, whatever applications are running onto the cluster, right? As we can see, the moment I did that, it just opens up a dashboard page where you can see my all namespaces and workloads. So let me choose my namespace where all my workloads are there. And I click on the deployments. Now, we will deploy it this way. I'm just trying to give you first a glimpse of how easily you can get a view of all your services in one place. It's your HTTP metrics, what at the TCP level, what was the bit rate per second. And then from here itself, if you click on any of the deployment object, it basically gives you a view that how that particular deployment, what is the success rate and all this stuff, right? And let me take you to an even better view as well. So it can go to the level of pods also. So if you are familiar with the term pod, that means where my application is installed, right, or deployed. So if I go to the web application, you can see this web application, it says the last when it ran, it had all the success rate and everything. But this basically missing few things, right? Because I'm not running the application right now. So let me launch the application on a different tab. This application is nothing unknown. It's a very known application in the Microsoft workshops and communities. It is available as an open source, and I have given the link as well. We have given the link in the GitHub. We'll run through that. But if you launch this application, basically it does some kind of a leaderboard view. It will give you to, it will allow you to do some rating and all this stuff. You can give some rating, you can submit the ratings. As you try to use it, you can suddenly see the magic here. That means it now introduced, because there was no traffic, it was only show you the pod. But the moment the traffic started happening, see, it is showing you from where the traffic has come. It shows that it is coming from my ingress and 100% success rate, the request rate per second at the 2 layer. So that means there is some bit of latency which is introduced. That's fine. It has gone through that into the pod. And even if you go to the deployment also, you get a very similar view of the deployment as well, that this is how my deployment has behaved. You can see there is no time has been, no additional latency has been introduced, right? Somebody unmuted himself or herself. Any question? If not, can you please mute yourself? Right. And as you can see, the moment there is no traffic, it went onto blank on the left-hand side, right? I will switch to my, okay, so before I move on, let me do one more thing. Let me take you to the diagram once again, what I was showing earlier. So this ingress that you see, that 3C, right? It's just a marker, don't go by that. So this ingress controller is already a, the ingress object is already a Kubernetes object, right? And we are using Nginx as the ingress controller. So Linkerd doesn't complain about it. Linkerd actually needs an ingress from our side. So it is actually in working with our ingress. So what you see on the left-hand side is basically the ingress controller that I have installed, whatever I have brought in. It is using that, but still it is getting the traffic and giving me all the information from there. I can actually switch my namespace to the ingress controller namespace, just to show you a better view of that. Now here, you would see slightly better view how the traffic is getting diverted. So this is what we actually call the traffic splitting. We will do this later. I'm just giving you a glimpse of the things, right? You saw what is observability. You can see now what is basically a traffic splitting. So right now the entire traffic is going onto the web application, right? Nothing is happening. So if I now start using it again, it basically has a time interval of 1 minute or something which you can change. And if I try using that, you will see the traffic now started coming into the ratings web application. And so that is how it is, diverting the traffic to the 3 different deployments, right? And that is the responsibility of an ingress, right? So ingress will, route your traffic. So it is not basically a splitting. I used the wrong term. It is basically routing. Any request coming in, if the request is for ratings web application, it will go to web application. If it is for a different application, so I have another application deployed on the same cluster, which is a Linkerd application only. I just shamelessly taken it and then running it here. So it is also showing some emoji samples. You can vote your favorite sample and all this stuff. So moment you start playing around with this, you will see that Linkerd will start taking this one as the traffic flow. And look at that. The web and web version 2 are the 2 versions of the same application. Can you see that? So 2 versions of the same application, and the traffic is getting diverted, right? So now let me show you one more thing, how it basically does all this stuff. So let me switch the namespace basically. If I switch the namespace, it will be easier for me to explain. So this is where you can see the traffic is diverted. And you see the weight, right? On the top, the weight. So 90% traffic will go to web SVC and only 10% will come here. Now this is a route which is not running properly intentionally. It is a wrong route. So if I now click on this page or try to play around maybe 10 times, so 9 times you will get all the things correctly. At one point of time, you will see some bit of latency and error, right? And then my other service will start getting into action. So I can do some refresh as well, just to make sure that it is happening and all this. If I go to the Linkerd, you will see that till now, all traffic is going to my 90% one. Nothing is coming to my error scenario. But the moment there is the number of requests goes beyond a certain percentage and it sees that, okay, 1% of the traffic I need to send it across to this guy. Now you can see there is some kind of an error. It is not being able to load because it has gone through my error route, right? And it is actually trying to make the 90% traffic has gone through that and the 10% is coming back. So I can again go back to this and view this traffic, right? I can also view the same traffic from a different window. So let me open that first again. In a much better view. So now you can see here, I got almost 87% success, but 13% failure on the voting because I had chosen the traffic split, right? So I introduced some error intentionally, which is basically taking the route. The point here is all these are features of service mesh technology, not Linkerd or Istio. You will get everything over there. The good part, it basically makes the life of the Kubernetes cluster operator, right? As well as the developer. So Kubernetes is all about two different worlds of architects, right? Infrastructure architect and developer architect, both joining hands. So they can directly go. So what if I go to this application directly? Look at the Grafana view of it. It just directly launches. I don't have to do any setting. I didn't do any setting. I just installed Linkerd and that's it. It shows me where the traffic spike, where the latency was, what is the success rate, where the success rate has gone down, what was the success rate percentage at that point of time. So right now, those days of developers blaming the infrastructure and infrastructure blaming the developers is actually gone. That wall is completely broken now, because nobody can blame each other. It's just joining hands. That's how you get the entire view. If the success rate is failing, that means something is problem with the application. Let's see. If there is any problem with the traffic flow, I can see that, okay, that's a network related problem. Let me look at the infrastructure. So both the world can view at it, right? So while I do that, let me close this window first of all.
Yeah, Mano, there is a quick question.
Yes.
It's from Krisho. It says, does Linkerd
Yes.
provide the GUI
Yeah,
by default?
I saw the question, but
yeah, okay.
yeah, I can take the question. Yes, you are right. Linkerd provide the GUI. So this is the Grafana GUI. So what you see, okay, this is the Grafana GUI, and this GUI is coming from Linkerd by default. No configuration needed. And I have also given, we have added the installation procedure for Istio and Linkerd. You will be able to run through the Istio. Linkerd, you can try it out. Very, very simple. We will see if I can run through that. Just a one-liner command. It installs everything, right? And for Istio, one needs to use Kiali, right? So you don't need to use Kiali, I would say. It all comes as a bundle with Istio. Again, like what you do here, right? So you are right. It's Kiali is the dashboard, but you don't need to install it separately or manage it. Just part of the bundle. Hope it answers your question. I will close these windows now because I need to close and go back to my window. It was running in the background, so I close it in the first way. Okay, so this is all about what we were talking about in terms of observability, splitting the traffic, and all this, right? Actually, I forgot to do one more thing. I believe we should have done that. Let me see if I can launch that. So Linkerd comes with some other integration with the third-party services. I think it is taking some time to launch because I probably have closed it, but yeah, no problem. So what it does basically, I will show you later with another example. What it basically does is it launches. It actually shows you. Let me show you the view as well. So it actually gives you a better view of how this tracing works. I go back to my window and I scroll down a bit. Sorry for that, but just wanted to show you because this is an important feature of Linkerd which we have to configure. My Zagat is still not yet configured. Let me take you to that. Yeah, this is the window. So these are all inbuilt. These are separate open source communities, and they are all integrated with Linkerd to give you a very nice view of the distributed tracing. So you can actually see that at what point of time, which application took how much, which service took how much time in milliseconds and all, and whatever, wherever the failure was happening and all this. Now, that is where we will come. We will talk about the different services, how these can be actually done even without the dependency on the third parties. We will talk about it. But for Linkerd, it's all inbuilt, although they are internally talking to a third party service to do that. Okay. So I have to configure it. I haven't configured it yet. So let me close that for now. and then I will do what I want to do is stop this dashboard, and then I will. So we will come back to that application again, the same application. Don't worry. So with that information in hand, we can now go and try to do some deployments on a different AKS cluster. So we have two clusters here created. Let me scroll back to my place so that we can go back through this instruction set. Yeah, so we have two clusters. Basically, one is a primary cluster. Treat this as your main production cluster or whatever, which is here, right? Very simple. We just use a simple one. You can have any kind of restrictive cluster here, private cluster, all your restrictions, networking, everything. This cluster, if you look at the overview section, it has Azure CNI enabled, but intentionally we haven't enabled any RBAC or anything, just to make sure that we can do it quickly, right? But you can have any kind of AKS cluster into this. We have a secondary cluster as well, which is a different one, right? These are all small clusters because in my environment, I cannot create or use too many cores. There is a limitation for me. So we created two clusters, one 3-node, another 2-node cluster. Assume the secondary cluster is as your working cluster where you want to do some testing and everything, right? Our purpose is that we will do some kind of a nice work in terms of service mesh and all these features on the primary cluster, if we can do that. And we will talk about all the features, we will talk about it in the primary cluster. And in the secondary cluster, we will be using for something which is a very critical feature provided by service mesh. We will talk about it later. It will be used at the later stage. So the initial discussions, I just go through this because these are the initial discussion is very simple. We actually let me take you to the place where we talked about, this is our very shortened view of what we basically want to accomplish through this entire GitHub workshop. You can just go through it step by step. We have done exactly the same thing in the workshop here, right? So the flow is like an anti-clockwise and clockwise. So you start from left. The first bucket is creating the cluster. We are giving as less importance as to this one for today, right? It can be any cluster. So we have just installed the cluster. We assigned some kind of a roles and all this stuff. And we installed Istio as well. That gives me a cluster on top. And then on the second part of it, you do the installation of the Istio's components. Then gradually you move towards adding all the features like observability, traffic splitting, blue-green deployment. And the last one is most important, that is traffic mirroring, which I was talking, for which we need the secondary cluster. We can actually shadow traffic from one cluster to another, right? The way the hands-on lab is designed is very simple. It can be run on anything. These are the simple prerequisites. If you are already on Azure, Azure CLI, the VS Code is preferred, but you can actually use our dev spaces, or even like in Azure Cloud Shell, you can launch VS Code as well. So anything, or even any other editor, wherever you are comfortable, as long as the VS Code has all the integrations with Kubernetes and AKS, it's easier. You need a GitHub client just to clone. Try not to clone this workshop or fork it. Maybe just download it as a zip, copy it, and then work on your own, right? And it can be anything. It's an AKS cluster, but it can be any Kubernetes cluster here, right? So the git cloning command already given. The link was already provided. You can clone it from here. And then I don't want to run through these things as of now, because these are all for creating the cluster. So don't go by that. I mean, not needed, because these are all standard way of creating an AKS cluster. How we log into Azure, we create a resource group separately. All of these are step-by-step guided. You can create a service principal, network, everything. Ultimately, you come here to create a cluster. It's a very simple cluster, as I mentioned. We created that with an Azure CLI. By the way, you can, if you are running with me or if you try to follow the GitHub thing, you can actually create a cluster from Portal also. Doesn't matter. We don't recommend that because it's for for a production workload you need more serious cluster with a lot of restrictions and everything, which is better done through an Azure CLI. We talk about the secondary cluster later. Let's skip for now. And then we move on to the Istio piece of it, right? So in Istio, what we basically want to do that, again, I'm talking about Istio multiple times. It's just a service mesh technology. So assume you are deploying one service mesh component into the cluster, right? So here there are a few commands and everything which you can use. So it's already been set on my thing. What I will do now. So this is how we basically switch our context. We, if you are familiar with the way the Kubernetes works is through a kubeconfig file, what you see on my screen, right? Kubeconfig file is basically the way you log in or enter into the cluster. You authenticate into the cluster. Now, I have only I have logged into multiple clusters from my local CLI. We will only talk about, let's not go into all the things. We will talk about only these two, the primary and the secondary cluster. These clusters are as of now created. When you create and you authenticate using the command that is provided in GitHub, you will basically be creating this kind of context on your kubeconfig file. So for example, I have the primary context already created because I authenticated using this command into the cluster, right? These are some of the environment CLI variables just set so that it works seamlessly and easily. And then you can use these commands to download the Istio as a tool, not within the cluster. This is a download of Istio, right? Similar command is for Linkerd. We will talk about it. Now, while downloading, the topmost command will basically download the latest version, which is 11.4. This workshop is tested with 11.3, right? Which I think 4 came a couple of weeks back. Well, I was working with 3. So what you can do if you want to try that out with 11.4, you can actually use this command. We have also given a command where you can download the specific version, 11.3, which you can download. It will download as a folder on your local drive, right? So if you go there and whenever you try this out, you will see it will create a folder like this. Istio, entire thing comes in here. We are only concerned about this thing, the binary that comes in. So this is Istio-ctl is the command line that we will use to connect to the Istio cluster. Okay. Now, and then this command basically does the setting of the Istio-ctl binary. Whatever you saw, this binary path is ideally set as a path variable so that you don't have to enter the entire path, right? So if you look at my bash profile, I have the Istio path already added here like this. So that means I can just type in Istio-ctl and it should work, right? So, and I am using, probably I'm using Istio-ctl version 11.3. Okay. My Istio-ctl version is 11.3, right? Okay. Correct. Now, if I, right. So what we need to do now, basically, as I had shown you, my config file, the Kubernetes file, is with the primary context where all my Istio installations or service mesh installation is there. All my service mesh applications, I will work there only, right? So, but my current context is a different cluster, workshop cluster, different one. I want to switch the context. So what I can do basically, I can come back to this. I have some environment variables already created, sorry, the CLI variables and environment variables as well. This is an environment variable created. So if I use this context, it basically switches the context to my primary. So that's the way you can use the same command line to switch between multiple clusters and the context, right? So I can do a quick check. Like as you see on our documentation also, we said check the cluster health. So we can do a quick check of this basically to see whether our cluster is all good or there is any problem. We can check the how many nodes are there. I see 3 nodes, right? And I can check the namespaces also. This is important, something to discuss about it here, right? Now, if I scroll away, you see that there are few namespaces already created, right? The primary namespace is something which is created here, which I had created. It's not Istio. Istio stuff goes in here in the Istio system. That's the only namespace where it installs everything. If you delete the namespace or if you uninstall and then delete it, it just removes everything of it, right? And this is exactly the same way other service mesh also works, right? So this is good part. We try to leverage namespaces as much as possible. By the way, namespaces are virtual clusters, right? So they are all small virtual clusters within the Kubernetes cluster. And we have some other namespaces also. So let us check that what is basically there in the cluster itself. So let me first take you to so these 2 steps are already done for me, but you have to do it. You can create an Istio system namespace in that cluster. We are always using ---- context command to make sure that the installation is happening on the correct cluster and correct context, right? If I now switch back to my config file, you see my current context is primary, and primary context is mapped with primary cluster. So we have to make sure that if you do not pass ---- context, it might go to a wrong or the current context it will. So if you are sitting on primary and want to install something on secondary, you have to always specify the context accordingly, right? Okay, so istioctl install is done for me, but let me talk about it. We are installing this now. This install, so earlier we downloaded, now we are installing. This basically installs everything on the Istio system namespace. So if I go back to my Visual Studio Code and I try to do what is there in my Istio system, and I am already right now in my this thing in my current context. So I'm not passing the context here because I know I'm in the primary context, but ideally we should do that. So here you can see there are what are the components. Okay, let me do a clear here and so that I can talk about it. This needs some discussion what has been installed. See, it has installed a Grafana pod here. Okay, it has installed, like somebody was asking, right? Kiali. So that is already installed, comes with that. Prometheus is installed for the metric collection. Istio D is the daemon server. Now, don't go by this that I'm talking about only one part. Every service mesh technology will do all these kind of, just the flip is how they implement it. They might be having some integration with any other open sources, or they might be doing some custom solutioning, but things are very similar. What you need to focus here is what is used for what, which one is used for what. So this is for dashboarding, this is for metric collection, and then we have the most important one, the second one, ingress gateway. So that is where we would be basically, that's our key, actually. Because that ingress gateway is the ingress controller that Istio provides. instead of using our controller. So if you are going with Istio, it actually comes up with that. At this point of time, just talking about it, you will see later on when we do Linkerd, Linkerd doesn't have this. Linkerd always depends on our ingress controller. So we can do a check just for now to make sure that to see what services are running into Istio system. Now you can see here, everything is all cluster service. This one is with public IP. So this is an IP address. So this is the ingress controller IP. Now, I have created or installed Istio as a public ingress controller. Ideally, I should not do that. It will be a private IP address from your subnet where the cluster is situated for this item, right? So it will be ideally that. You can configure Istio to do that as well. So now we have this. What it brings here with this feature is, okay. So with that, like you now understand that what the ingress gateway and whatever things have been installed. Let me quickly show you one thing which probably would help you to understand. Like if you remember, we talked about sidecar. We talked about sidecar when we were going through it. I scroll up slightly. We talked about sidecar proxies, right? That every pod will have a sidecar, means another application deployed, another container added so that Istio can do its own stuff. Now, how this is made sure that it will do? How? Because I might have so many applications from different vendors. I do not want service mesh to take care of everything. I want a piece of it. That also I can do. So here, if I go to the cluster, you will see something very nice. If I go to namespaces, you see any namespace, the namespace is primary. I'm clicking on that. It says there is a label Istio injection enabled. So this enablement means that I am telling all deployment inside that cluster will be monitored by Istio. But if I go back to my, if I go back to my other namespaces, for example, DB, which is not monitored by the service mesh, it doesn't have any label, so it will not be monitored. So if I try to now run my command for launching the dashboard, right? Istio CTL dashboard. I should actually use the context here always. Let me do that. Let me launch it. So this will basically allow Istio now to read through my cluster. Now, okay, let me also do one more thing. Due to my problem in my eyes, I always do it as a black window, but unfortunately the Kiali dashboard is not so designed for black windows and all. Okay, so here is a very quick view of what is going on, and you will see what basically it brings. Again, if I go by the namespaces, right, I can go to my workloads. There are no workloads on the primary, so I will select a workload where there is something. Now, this workload, this view is something I have, internally myself and Bapi were discussing that how we would present this, whether it should be some particular service mesh technology to be only focused and all. We have chosen this view just because one reason, because it brings in all the best practices that you need to follow while you design your pods and your Kubernetes architecture. Look at this window and you will get a lot of things. Both my applications are having two labels, application and version. Now, this is not a Kubernetes restriction, but these are all best practices. And some of the service mesh, especially like Istio, they basically enforce that. If you do not add these, it will not basically try to capture your traffic, even if you ask to do so. So for example, if I go to my DB, you can see ratings MongoDB is a container. It's a MongoDB container. But what it is trying to say here is that it is missing the sidecar. Why it is missing sidecar? So if I click on that, it will say that Istio head container not found, right? This is one thing. And the second important information is this, that you are missing the, let me get inside and you will be able to see. It says that you haven't added app or versioning. So this is one of the way that you can basically modernize and make your applications correct in architecture, right? You know that, okay, if I don't do that, Kubernetes is not tying my hands, but Service Mesh is doing that. So that I don't, because versioning is key to the success of any Service Mesh. If you don't do versioning, Service Mesh is not going to work as expected, right? Because your multiple applications deployment, only observability can happen, but other features will not. So let's move on. Let's move on with whatever I have at this point of time. So I can look at the services also. Let me change my namespace. So it's very quick to check my namespaces and everything. Now here there is a very interesting stuff. So if I click on the service, I see there's an empty graph, right? I can actually try to load a graph. You can see if I try 3 hours or something, does it load anything? Or maybe even before that, it tries to load something, it doesn't get any data. Forget about it, it's a new implementation. So we keep it on to 5 minutes. But what I want to do here is, I want to launch the application, what I was launching from my different cluster and was monitored by Linkerd. I will now try to launch it from here. But how do I launch the application? So that is where we have given some command which might be easier for you to utilize. So let me Control C here. We basically tried to see whatever services are running, and we got this as our public IP, right? So let me see that if I have some kind of so I do not have anything installed as of now apart from the application, right? So how do I launch this application then? If I need to launch this application, somehow I need some kind of gateway to talk to Istio so that Istio will understand this is the path. So if I now try to click on this thing, basically, if I now try to launch this, it will actually go nowhere because it doesn't know where to go. So that is where we have given in the sample itself. If you are following my sample, the one that is being given there, you can see we have given something called, and these are all commands being given here. As I am moving along, I am also following the command level. So I'm at the gateway. I'm going to discuss about gateway now. So we have given a gateway, a ratings gateway. This is already given for you, right? This is an object that Istio uses to expose your application, right? So it has an ingress controller, but if you are coming from the Kubernetes world, you know what is an ingress object is. It's different from controller. Controller is a load balancer. So here the load balancer is provided, but I need some routing to be done. So here I have a routing. Right? So let me try to see if I can install this gateway. I will copy this command. Basically, it is there in below. I can directly take it from there. If I take the burden of again doing it, I can actually directly try to launch this application. This is my gateway installation. So it's nothing, just it is going to deploy the gateway YML object into that namespace, and the context is the primary context, right? I will explain what this does. We have a very good diagram as well. So if I try to enter this, it creates a gateway object here. See, if I now run my gateway, you will see it has a gateway now, right? Which will basically expose my application to the outside world. And I will explain what this VS means. We will talk about it just now. Now, once we do that, you see the application is loaded now. Because the moment it got the gateway, it was trying. It has now got that. It is now the same application is running on a different cluster. And let's see what our friend Service Mesh is doing, or Kiali is doing. Is it basically? Yes. So that's now you can see that how quickly it was already loading the data. It has now captured all the information from that application, its flow and everything. And it is showing that what is the RPAs. This is actually the distributed tracing inbuilt. So that's the reason I earlier showed you from a different tool. That is also integrated where to launch. But here in this case, these guys are providing this entirely as part of it. The point, the bottom line is how easily both developer architect and infrastructure architect can get inside and see this. Let me load the graph as well. Let's see. This is a very good view of the graph, right? If I try to make this, I try to hide this one as well. So you can see it basically gives me a full view of the application flow. Ingress gateway, you saw this in case of Linkerd also. We were showing. So the point here is there is no difference between these two technologies, if you say. I mean, implementation is different, but ultimately they do the same thing. They have an ingress, they are using ingress controller to route the traffic to my service. It goes to the pod. So service to pod, that's the Kubernetes way of doing it, right? From the pod, it is redirected to two-way. One is because I have to, the pass-through cluster is their own implementation where they do some security check and then ultimately passes the traffic to my pod. In the pod, it has an outbound connectivity to a MongoDB container, right? So now let us go to and see that what exactly is happening in the service itself.
Hey, Mano, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Yes.
There's a few questions I think we should kind of take it up now. It's related.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So first
Absolutely.
thing is from Krisho, does Linkerd provide the GUI by default for Istio? I think we already answered that.
We answered that, yes.
Yeah. So next one is from Muthu Kumar. To get this tracing that we were discussing about the distributed tracing, do we need to be aware of any open tracing library integrations? Basically any code change that needed for getting these traces into the application code, I guess.
Yeah, so basically, Muthu, I saw your last question as well, the gateway, VS and ingress gateway. That is what I will be coming into right now. So you will get that answer. The other one, yes, for tracing, basically there is a default tracing that you can see, right? They are already catching the information that is available in terms of the requests and everything. But, like if you want to do within the API, there might be different subpaths, like what you were showing, we were trying to show you earlier with the Zagar implementation, right? If you have the SDK installed in Zagar and then you call or set information to a particular port, then and you can specify the port to the Zagar component to read the data from. So it will basically get the traces of all these APIs from that port. We have given that as an example in the Linkerd section of our workshop, right? You will see that how if we set an environment variable with the port number or and the values, whatever is needed, it will basically get the data from there. But that is only because that is only the thing that inside your API, the internal applications or internal routes are talking to each other, right? But if anything is exposed to the outside world, that is directly being captured by the service mesh as a technology.
Perfect. So
Let me
next
know
one
if
is
that answers.
about, yeah, I
Yeah.
think that kind of
Yeah.
covers. Next one is about from Krisho. When using service mesh, do we still need to configure network policies in Kubernetes, like how we do it?
So yes, so network policy is for your east-west traffic, and that is between. So take for an example here. I think we are at the right spot then. Let me go to the graph again and see. Right. Let me increase the time limit also. Otherwise, yeah,
Mhm.
the graph is gone. So here you can see if you want that the ratings API service will not accept the request from ratings web, right? Or if you want that in a particular namespace, the other namespace should not access. So those type of things are in your control. Service mesh will not come into the play with that, right? As you can see, service mesh right now is capturing all the traffic for this particular namespace. But you might have a network policy that the QA pods should not talk to the dev pods, which is right, which you should do, right? In that case, service mesh is not causes. So it's all separate. Your implementation of network policy is own implementation. As long as it is not directly causing any issue, right? For example, you do some kind of a policy that can break the service mesh to get the data, max to max it cannot report, right? There is no other issue. So that is how it is. You can always implement your um, network policies, east west traffic. Yeah.
Great. And also personally, how I look at it is most of the service meshes, they are more infrastructure specific service across cluster. So no matter what application you deploy, it basically works across all your applications. And it basically works basis you're intercepting your network calls most of the time, right? So it basically knows what, and as you would have noticed initially how Monojit showed about the ingress, and it works at that level. Basically, it actually intercepts and knows traffic moving around, and then creates that telemetry, creates the visualization accordingly. So that's the way.
Right.
Okay, great. So
Absolutely.
few 2 3 more questions. So the next one is about we are using AKS. So even for Istio, are we responsible to manage its own control plane and data planes, even though we are using AKS?
Yes, because data, okay, so that control plane and data plane both are installed on your worker node cluster, nothing to do with the master node, right? So it's
Yeah.
all in the worker node cluster, but that's the segregation of the service mesh itself. You have to both, you are not managing, Istio will manage, right? It's all part of the Istio system namespace, right? What we were talking about earlier, right? If you go and see what are the namespaces, so all the things that the namespace Istio system has, basically it segregates logically between these two. So that's all managed by them.
Yeah. And then very interesting question. When using Istio, do we still need to configure services somehow or plug in Jaeger? Is just enough? How Jaeger works with Istio?
So basically, this is where so Zagger is basically for distributed tracing. Now
Yeah.
we are not discussing Zagger intentionally here, Krisho, right? I mean, if I'm pronouncing your
Yeah.
name correctly. So we are not intentionally talking about this because then if we start talking, it will be an endless discussion on all the open sources. You are free to explore and do how Zagger works, right? But the point here is Istio has some uh, integrations inbuilt with these open sources. That's why we are bringing this up. Now, if you say that no, I have a separate tool which does which does distributed tracing in a much better way, you are free to install that and have its own view, right? It's not doing anything confronting with that. Uh, the service configuration is nothing to do with the service configuration, I would say, because it's all about how services are talking to each other. But as I said when I was responding to Muthu's question, right? If within the service there are multiple routes, like for example, if you are on Azure, you know the difference between Azure Monitor and Application Insights SDK, right? If you install SDK, you get much more in-depth view of your application traffic, right? Whereas Azure Monitor without SDK integration gives you also a very nice view, right? Because anything that it can inject into the application and get the data out of. Service Mesh is doing the same thing. But if you are really if you want to get more insights into your applications and all, you can always do that kind of SDK integration and work on that, right? But yeah, to answer your question, there is no separate service configuration is needed. All are your implementations only. Like what you see here on this cluster is just a deployment that I have done without knowing that Istio was there. So I just installed it, and after that I told, in fact, in the command line you will see, I just said that please, where I mentioned that please inject, yeah, this is where I said in the namespace, please inject Istio. So that means from that time onwards, it started monitoring my services. Otherwise, it will not do. It's a very democratic way of doing it. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think the last major question is about the differences between the gateway VS and the ingress gateway.
Yes. I think that is a thing that I was planning to go, and I will come to that here. Yeah. So this is basically the one single view of that. So Muthu, I mean, you please, if you want, you can unmute yourself and tell me, like once I explain, if you have a few further questions. So basically, the way it works is, it's the logical implementation of the whole thing. There is an object called virtual service. The gateway is your gateway. Gateway is simple, right? Through which you enter into the system. The gateway will actually route to virtual service. Virtual service will talk to another object it might talk to. So these dotted lines means it might or might not. The bold filled up line means it will, right? So dotted lines means it might or might not talk to some destination rule to understand where to go. Otherwise, if it can decide on its own, it will go to the appropriate services and the pods. Now, having said that, quickly, if I go to my implementation of the gateway, you see there is no destination rule or anything. There is a gateway object. It accepts star as the host, which is bad, but everything is fair on demo. So I just kept it a star. But ideally it should be actual hostname, right? Which is your ingress hostname. Then it has a virtual service object. That's exactly the same way. Sorry, exactly the same way the diagram is drawn. Gateway to virtual service.
So can we safely assume that this gateway is equivalent to the ingress controller object? Generally we do, no? Let's say like Nginx.
So I would suggest, Muthu, that gateway is our ingress object, not ingress controller. Ingress controller, so there are two gateways. Okay, let me just explain that quickly. So this Istio ingress gateway is the load balancer. You can see that this is exactly your Nginx ingress controller or any ingress controller. Correct. Which gives me a public IP, right?
Correct.
And then inside, what you see as a gateway object, you see the gateway object is a CRD, custom resource definition, which is referring to the ingress gateway of Istio. It can refer to any other ingress gateway also, any other controller also here. We are using the default one, but we can change it. This gateway object is core to service mesh, which is basically same as our ingress routing. So if you
like we generally define the ingress class, right? So similar way, I can define this Istio gateway as some other gateway as well without ingress gateway. Am I right?
Yes. So if you look at my screen, this is my Kubernetes ingress object, right?
Correct.
Which we configure with all the routing and everything. This is exactly is your this gateway and virtual service together is basically giving you this routing facility. So this is the router where actual routing of the services will happen. And ingress controller is basically giving me the entrant, the IP address, which is exposing to the outside.
Okay. So the gateway object is global then, is it? Or is it again, because I don't see anything specific to namespace is created. So is it a global interface for figuring out the rules?
So this gateway, Istio ingress gateway, is the global.
Yes. Okay. The normal gateway object, I'm saying, gateway object.
This gateway object is specific to the namespace.
Okay.
So ingress controller, so you can see the line number 7, right? So this is the ingress controller reference. It is telling, please go to the gateway object. Gateway object will see whether the host is a valid host or not. And where to go, is it HTTP or port or whatever, blah, 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 it will check. Then it will hand over the control to virtual service, which will do the actual routing. So these two are namespace specific.
Okay, okay. So if I can ingress gateway is a global listener, which
This
I
one,
can
yes.
map it to any number of namespace using a separate gateway creation in the specific namespace, along with the virtual service. If I also wanted to do a routing policies, like you need to
Absolutely.
service yes.
Absolutely. This is exactly what we do with ingress controller also, right? One ingress controller, but I can have multiple ingress. So same thing, one ingress controller, but I can have multiple virtual services.
Yeah, only one difference I could see is from those, and this is the gateway object is different, right? Because generally we don't have gateway object there. We just define.
You are absolutely right. Yes, there is a nice reason. So there is a reason for doing that. Let me, I mean, like once we go into the subsequent samples, I will tell you this segregation, this object-oriented segregation brings one nice benefit, that you can now decide that what can. So you can have multiple hosts handled by gateway and only use the virtual service to, only use virtual service to wherever you want to route to. So your gateway can be handling 3 or 4 host names, right? It's an array. It can handle other hosts also. But your virtual service, right? Your virtual service will be mapped to that. So the point here is separating the concerns of host and the routing of the host is something that is done by them, which is, I believe, from the design perspective is good. You are right. It's a different from raw Kubernetes implementation that we do. We directly talk to ingress object, but here that ingress object is again broken into 2. You can think of that.
Correct. Basically, it also gives, because in ingress object you can define the host, again the rules. Here you can define both separately using a gateway object and rules with virtual service.
Absolutely. Yes. You're right.
Thanks. Yeah, I got it.
No problem. Thank you so much. So right now, I will also do one more thing. Now, this virtual service, now, if you look at this diagram, there are 4 components actually. We will talk about service entry later. We will talk about destination rule shortly. But gateway and virtual service, you have understood that from here, routing will happen. Apart from routing, virtual service is a very each object. You can basically initiate something which is called fault injection. Now we have talked about it in our diagram. This is the fault injection diagram. So from the service itself, I want to see how my system is behaving if I route 10% of my traffic to a fault. And 90% is the good route, right? So this is very easily implemented with this kind of an implementation. So if I try to enable that, right? It is very simple. It has a fault object already implemented definition inside. I'm saying that you add 3 seconds of delay, fault delay, and fail all the 100% traffic. It's not 10, 90. I'm saying 100% you fail. You send it to fail, to the fail route. And ultimately, after 3-second delay, you call this service. So that means I now know that if I introduce some delay or some kind of fault, now there are different types of, I haven't used all the parameters. Would request you guys, if you are interested, you can explore more. There are a lot of other parameters. With that, I can introduce a delay to a certain extent that I know that how resilient my system is. So let us try to deploy this again quickly. So I'm now deploying this. I have deployed this already, right? So now a fault should be introduced. So let us see what happens if I click on all these. You can see there will be a delay on each and every page. You can see that, right? Every page I'm just calling in, there will be a delay, and even the images are loading slowly just by adding that component. I'm adding a a rating, which was so fast. Now it is taking a lot of time. I don't have the images below. It took a lot of time, right? Let's go to Kiali, what it does basically. Is it doing anything? So if I now click on the service, right, and if I continue to do that, you will see at some point of time, or maybe I try to load this again, it will introduce our request per second and everything will basically be more. So you can see, let me do a 1 minute refresh actually, so that you can understand. So gradually you will see, so the RPS is increasing. It was almost 0.12, right? It is increasing now. And at some point of time, if the load is huge and every request is adding 3 seconds, you will see a red mark here. That means now my requests are failing or it is taking too much time. So beyond a certain limit, which you can configure in Istio, it would start reporting that there is some alert, right? I can just try to do, if I do it as a loop, it will do that. But otherwise, you can see or you can understand the intent of this, right? Introducing some kind of a fault to test your system, how your testing is, system is behaving and all this. And you will be able to see in the workloads also, each workload will now introduce some kind of delay into that. Earlier it was, I mean, if you had followed it, it was much lesser, and now it has introduced some bit of delay into this. You can see your inbound metrics is very good. So you can see your throughput is increasing, right? But let me see if I can see. Yeah. So your response throughput is taking more time, right? So you can basically have a look of entire workflow by introducing this. Now, if I go back to again to, I know I'm running a bit fast because I want to highlight multiple things, but yeah, I'm sorry for that. But anyway, that's the reason we have created that step-by-step guide so that you can always do. I will again put that back quickly because I need to deploy other applications also. Right now, the moment I do that, and if I try to click on this, you see now how fast the things are loading, and you can go back. You can see the graph is 0.04. You can see RPS now. It was almost 0.36 RPS. Is it visible, Bapi, or it's too small? I actually can't, yeah. Is it visible?
This is visible. This is better now.
Yeah. Okay. So now you can see that how the RPS has gone down the moment I do that. So this is all about the fault injection and testing the resiliency of it, right? Okay. Let me quickly go back to this. Okay. Now, what I will do as per the command line, I will now introduce something called, I will now try to deploy some of the sample applications. So, by the way, I didn't have a chance to talk about this folder structure. In the Istio section and Linkerd section, you will see samples are already provided. Sorry, samples are already provided. Included all basic samples which are needed to test from Istio site itself. So it's all there. If you see, if you look at these samples, you will get a lot of them, right? And if you download Istio, you get a whole lot of sample applications into this, right? So I will actually try to deploy one of these book info application and see how that behaves. Okay. So where is my book info? So let me try to deploy this, the book info application, and I will make sure that I type in the context because I know the context is correct, but so in the same primary cluster, I'm trying to deploy book info in the primary namespace. Oh, what is that? Oh, there's a one. So now it is deploying the book info application into my primary namespace. So again, If I go back to Kiali quickly, I will run through very fast now. If I go back to the primary namespace, you can see my application has come back, which was not showing earlier, but then there is no traffic. Why there is no traffic? Now you know, because I have to install a gateway for this. Now I can use the same gateway. So Muthu, to answer your question, we can have one gateway with multiple routes. But here, since the namespaces are different, I'm just deploying um, you know uh, sorry. So what I mean to say here is the ingress gateway is still same across all the namespaces. The gateways are namespace specific. So we created one gateway for a ratings application, which is a different namespace. Since it's a different one called primary, I will create a different, I will actually install a different one. So before I do that, I quickly check my service. I see all my services are there. Do I know the pods? I have the pods there as well. I will quickly check if my pod. Okay, now quick point. 2x2. Are you okay to accept this? Why it is 2x2? Because every pod has now two containers. One the application container, other one is sidecar container. So don't get surprised by 2x2, right? So that's why. Now if I do a quick check of pod name, I just save it. I'm just doing it because it's tested command. So I just want to test the pod is basically should respond back with some message. So my application is running locally. So let's expose it through a gateway. Let's expose it through a gateway. Gateway is created. I open the gateway also here. This is my primary gateway. It is named as primary gateway. It has all these routes. Some points are blocked intentionally. We will come to that now shortly. Now it is all there. So I know there is a product route which should give me some data. So I quickly go over there. I know what is my now since I haven't mapped it to a domain, I have to copy that address always. So let me do that. I actually did a nice thing. I have it in the gateway URL. Okay, that's in that. Okay, my product page is running, but it is not loading. What is giving error? Let me see. Okay, let me show you the other applications. Then in the meantime, I will try to see. Okay, might have been something going wrong. I will check that later separately. But the point here is, here also you see that I have actually deployed a gateway directly to expose my application. So you can see there is a route called API V1 products. So, if I try to do, or I would check that whether okay, so somehow I think the gateway is probably not running or something. I will look into that. But the point here is through the gateway itself, you will be able to deploy. So whenever you deploy some application, you need to basically try this out through the gateway so that you can make sure that your applications are deployed properly. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on a quick time check. So
yeah.
We have around 23 minutes to go.
Yes, exactly. So I will talk about the other thing where I probably would to spend time. So this one, I think right now, I think some problem with my gateway configuration, but you guys can always try that out and see that how this routing works. Now, having said that, what I want to highlight here is another important stuff. I think we have already deployed and implemented this. So this is fine. We'll now talk about this traffic splitting functionality, right? Now, in terms of traffic splitting, what happens, right? How Istio or Service Mesh does that. I will just complete this in next 10 minutes. We have the traffic splitting and then the blue-green. These two we want to discuss. And then I will open it for Q&A if there is any further question. So for traffic splitting, before we get into the Service Mesh world, let me tell you that it is actually something already provided by the Kubernetes construct. How is it? If you look at this diagram, it will be very clear. So you can see there is a service which is pointing to two pods separately, right? Every service has an endpoint, right? So if I just try to describe a service, the service will have endpoints already, 1 and 2. So it knows that I have to load balance between pod 1, pod 2 by this IP address, endpoint 1, endpoint 2, right? So what happens if somebody changes this endpoint? That means that's where your call to source service will actually route to a different service which is on the right-hand side, right? So you can see that just by changing 1 to 2, I can make sure that all my calls will now go to IP address 2 rather than IP address 1. So that means I can basically route my traffic into two different endpoints like this. Exactly the same feature is implemented here, right? So if you click one service, we will check the version. So these versions, so Istio works on the levels, right? Based on the version that is there in the pod as a level, it will try to route the traffic. We have already seen the routing. We have seen how we can do 90% and 10% routing. This is an example, right? How you can basically use the traffic splitting for multiple purposes. This is for traffic splitting. You can use the same thing for fault injection. We have seen the fault injection, right? We did 100% fault injection to a route. So all concept is same. Just changing the endpoint, we can decide where to go. But we cannot do it by creating endpoint objects and modifying and all this, right? So basically, our service mesh technology is coming into play for this. It basically tries to utilize the levels and all its internal construct to route the traffic easily. Now, and the same thing. So now when you go with a blue-green approach, it's we have already given an implementation of that here. So in the same application, you will see a blue-green object is also created. So you can deploy blue and you can deploy green. Blue is with label version 1 and green is with label version 2. So you can route the traffic to 10% and 90% between blue and green. Now, how to do that? That's where the diagram that I was presenting earlier makes sense here. This one, right? I will have two destination rule. Now the destination rule come into play. With two destination rule, my virtual service will decide that I have to go 10% to destination rule 1 and 90% to destination rule 2. So this is what you can see as an example here. We have created a destination rule object. So three objects are primarily responsible for everything. One is the gateway, then the virtual service. Virtual service talks to destination rule. So moment you specify that I need the version, so you can see that now these subsets are nothing but the labels. I am asking this destination rule saying that, okay, if it is coming with V1, then search for the label version 1 in the pod. So any pod that is with version V1 will be routed if you come with a /V1 subset. So let me open the pod info YML also so that you can understand. Sorry, let me open the gateway here. So you will understand what I mean by this. Where was that? Yes. So if I enable this, what you see here is I'm specifying my destination of, so here it is 100% I'm saying will go to version 1 and 0% will go to version 2. So when I say subset V1, virtual service subset V1, try to understand this point because this will make sure that how without any help from any other technology, you can basically do blue-green seamlessly. Subset version 1, it will go ahead and try to check my destination rule, which is created. The destination rule is here, this object. It will now try to see if it is version 1, then I will route the traffic to all the pods which are version V1. It's very simple. There is no rocket science in this. That my virtual service is saying I want to go to V1 and destination rule saying, okay, then your label is version V1. You go to that particular pod. So that's how my traffic is getting routed. The weight is basically the percentage, right? Now, so that means you are using same traffic splitting, but you are doing your blue-green, you are doing your fault injection, everything. And then finally, we talk about this feature, which is, I believe, after that I will open it for the Q&A. But this is the probably the most important feature in the service mesh implementation. This is called the service mirroring or shadowing. We call it shadowing, right? It uses the same concept of changing the endpoints, but what it does basically, suppose, let me zoom it in. Suppose you have two clusters. One is primary is your production, and secondary is your working cluster, QA or dev and test, right? And you have a great sale day coming, maybe in 2 days' time, right? And you don't know how your application would behave on that day. You don't know. So what you can do basically with the same this mirroring functionality, you can basically route your same traffic to another cluster where the application is deployed. A different version is deployed here. So instruction is given in the GitHub. You can follow step by step and run this through. You can actually see that how the mirroring is working in that across two clusters. That means my production workload, whatever is coming in here, I will actually transfer a percentage of that to here in the second cluster. Now that means the live traffic, which is now coming into my production environment, is also replicated into a separate cluster. I can do testing, load testing, performance fixing, and all, and then I can do a blue-green deployment to deploy the actual one into the production. So that means the error in case of a production scenario is completely minimized. We have given some examples here as well. You should follow this. We are creating a secondary cluster, and in the secondary cluster we are configuring. This step-by-step guide is completely tested, so you can basically follow the same examples that are given in the workspace and try to replicate that. These 4 or 5 features are all important, and make sure that you have a very good production release and all this, right? So I will just stop here to see if there are any questions or not. Otherwise, I will talk about, I mean, we already talked about Linkerd, but there are a few things to still, maybe another 5 minutes. But yeah, I will first see if there is any important question which you can address right now. Any question, team? Anyone?
I don't see any specific question.
So I think the questions you have already answered, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Fine. So let me go to the. Now here also, it's a very simple implementation in Linkerd. There is no difference, but only thing is that what I was trying to show you earlier, right? And we had shown you that entire view. It all depends on your ingress controller. Linkerd does come with a gateway, but not a proper ingress controller. So it is always recommended that you bring your own ingress controller and integrate with Linkerd. That works seamlessly. So we have actually given an example of Nginx. Linkerd site has example of different ingress controllers also. With that, you can install the Linkerd now. Okay, let me switch to that. Why don't we? So if I try to do that, I'm inside this. So let me check the pods here in my folder, in my namespace file. Right. So now, if I try to launch Viz is basically the dashboarding capability which is inbuilt. Somebody was asking, so yeah, this is the dashboarding capability. So here we will talk about few other things which we couldn't talk last time before we move on to the Istio thing. So let this thing deploy. In the meantime, let me show you how the traffic splitting and all these things are so similar in Linkerd as well. Look at the traffic splitting object here. The same thing. Like we had the object of virtual service doing the splitting. Here I have since the routing is done by Ingress, I have a separate object called traffic split that can divide your traffic into two versions of the service, as you can see this line. So I'm saying 90% going to service 1 and 10% going to service 2. So just by this configuration, right, any call that is coming to Wave SVC will first go to 90% here, and I can change that as well. So with that, basically, let me open that quickly. Yeah. So here, one good thing is that the injection is seamless. I mean, you just inject everything into that, deployment. It directly happens, and it doesn't have a service level view, but it basically can give you, like if I click on the web version of it. So as you can see right now, only 90% succeed, it marks with the color. And then you can see that what under every deployment, how each pod is behaving. You might have multiple pods, right? How many requests that each pod is taking and all this stuff, which was there in history as well. I'm just showing that how the difference in the view. And the Grafana implementation is a single Grafana object. Don't get confused that why so many Grafana instances are there. Only one Grafana instance. You can basically switch between multiple pods. So you can see from here that how you switch to a different pod and see how the requests and everything is working. The implementation, the installation instructions, everything step by step is given. You guys can try that out. The purpose of this workshop was to make you aware that all the burning questions of our today's production workload, which was there even 10 years back, we didn't have any answer. 5 years back, we started getting answers, are now having a very concrete answer. So start using it, and any of the technologies. Actually, in fact, in our references section, we have added something, all the references. Like you can talk about Open Service Mesh as well, which we have enabled. Now this is a more of a Microsoft community version, right? We have added it as an add-on in AKS cluster. Similar thing, it has also dependencies with third parties, but very integrated view, right? So you can use that. It's just GA, I believe, recently. And one final point before I close is, apart from all the service-based technologies and whatever we have discussed so far, there is another one which you should not forget, is basically our own API management, right? That is not a kid in the block. That is actually a very strong contender against the service-based technology in many to a large extent, actually, in many senses. You can actually now containerize API management. You can see this diagram, containerized API management running inside the cluster, right? So API management can route, it can do the job of your virtual service or ingress object. It doesn't have a load balancer, right? So for that, what it can do, since it is coming from outside, it can rely on the load balancing capability of the service itself. Every Kubernetes service has a load balancing capability, right? The inbuilt round robin load balance. So that it can rely on, and then it can do many features, like whatever you can actually do all majority of the things with service mesh or Linkerd as well, but not so seamlessly as API management. So you can do authentication with Azure AD. You can basically add these policies. These are very important one. And the colored one, this the bold one is important. That means you can now. So Bapi, I know I will have just 6 minutes. I will take 1 minute more just to explain that what we mean by the custom role. So you can actually, if you use API without any service mesh dependency, you can have API management deployed, and you can go to the level of doing an RBAC at the API level. So you can decide that Monojit can access Eco API, but Bapi can only access Conference API. So those type of API level stuff, policies and role and access is quite rich in API management. So this is also, we are seeing a good trend where API management, not as a service mesh replacement, but as the router, inside the cluster is making more sense. It's costly option, true, but it comes with a lot of rich benefits as well, right? So yeah, so here I stop and will stop sharing my screen as well. See if there is any question. Otherwise, you guys can always reach out to us. Feel free to do that. Bapi, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Mano. I think it was fantastic collaborating with you and working with you on this. I hope everyone loved the conversation so far, just like how I did. Now, a few things quickly, right? Most important part is, of course, as we continuously make changes to the workshop that we just delivered, we would love to hear from you in terms of how did you find it. So first of all, please share your feedback. Your feedbacks are valuable to us so that we can make continuous changes into the workshop. So you can put your comments into the GitHub also, or you can also write to us. That's one. Secondly, in the future, we would also love to hear what you intend to hear from us, right? So what is it that you would love to hear more from us in terms of what is coming or some specific aspects in terms of how you are deploying in your own organization, Kubernetes service mesh and the like of the technologies. So please let us know. And we'll keep on bringing newer technologies and newer conversations all the time as we did. So any questions? We are here for another 4 minutes. Would love to talk to you more on this.
I see one question. Sorry, Bapi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I see. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I see one question. So yeah, thanks, Muthu. And so basically, I lost this Grafana showing data. Yes, so internally it is Prometheus only. You are right. Prometheus and Grafana all are integrated in there, for both of them. So they are using the Prometheus metrics to get the data and then showing. But you don't have to configure anything. It's part of the Linkerd implementation. You can go through the step-by-step guide in GitHub, try to install and see. You don't have to install anything additional.
Yeah,